Hello and welcome to PDXCON Remixed and Talk Cities to Me Part 2. In this discussion, we will continue on the series that unfortunately was cut short due to COVID last year. And here we let our creators talk about city design and their own inspiration when building cities in real life and in game. So this time, based on your feedback, we traveled across the world through the speed of internet to find 3 different creators from 3 different time zones in pretty vastly different areas of the world as well. So we have ImperialJedi from Canada. Hello. And then we have ReputationUh from China.
Hello.
And then we have Palpatine 001 from New Zealand. Hello.
Kia ora and good evening, everyone.
Nice. I hope you're well. We are super excited to have you on board. My biggest concern is how is the Jedi and the Sith coming along in this group?
We're working together nicely, I hope. I think we're maybe on the same side in this case.
All right. Yeah. Good to hear. Yeah. I'm not going to take up too much of your time here. The floor is yours, obviously. But I would love to start this whole conversation and discussion by getting to know you guys a bit better, you know, what you do in the community and what cities you are from each region. So maybe you can start, Jedi?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm ImperialJedi, a bit of a Star Wars fan. My name's Will. I'm a Canadian. And so I used to live in Toronto, Canada, which is one of the bigger cities. And just last month, I actually moved to little old Langford on Vancouver Island. And where I used to live was 2 million plus people. And where I live now is like 30,000 people. So the difference, absolutely wild when it comes to city stuff. And then in regards to city stuff for the community, I do a weekly stream. And I do a lot of tutorial and like starter style city stuff for City Skylines over on YouTube.
Cool. That's awesome. And what about you, Ben? Palpatine?
So I'm Ben, or Palpatine 001, or as I'm quite affectionately known in the community, the Senate for short.
The Senate.
The Senate himself. So I've been an avid urban simulator player since the days of SimCity 2000, so going right back and all the way through to City Skylines. I use City Skylines today. I Twitch Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays my time here in Auckland, New Zealand, but I use City Skylines as also as a work tool in my line of work. So I'm an urban planner in real life here in Auckland, and so I can use it as a communication tool, but I also use it in Twitch as just casual playthrough, but also to teach people the concepts of urban planning. And the one thing that hangs them up always, left-hand traffic.
Oh yeah, oh my god, yeah.
Yep. But hey, Jedi, hey, if I can get couple of you guys using roundabouts, I've achieved my mission.
I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Cool. And what about you, Henry?
Yep. I'm like Chinese for like I live in Beijing for all the times, but like this year I'm going to move to New York because like I get admissions to NYU. So yep, like so nice. I was like that is my dream place. A lot of buildings, a lot of tall buildings, you know, the architecture there is very fantastic. Yep. I've been making like city skyline videos for about like 2 years almost, and I just create some videos about like mainly about Chinese cities and Japanese cities, stuff like that. So yeah, and I also create some workshop content, some
cool.
apartment stuff like that. Yep. That's
nice.
all. That's all. Yep.
Nice. So, you know, you coming from so different kind of areas in the world, you know, can you see a trend where you live, for example, in Japan and China? Do you have like any specific kind of trends you see in the city planning, how that looks there?
So the trends, I guess, is like the cities, like the thing is getting closer and closer, you know. A lot of things are adding together for usually in the past, like for example, the commercial zones, residential zones, or even the industrial zone is separated in the different part of the cities. But today's like mainly in China and Japan, I can see the trends that like, for example, the commercial zone, the malls, and some apartments, stuff like that is coming together, is to integrating into the one system.
It's a mixed use zoning.
So yeah, it's a mixed use zone. So this is like, I guess, a trend now for some eastern cities. Yeah.
What about you guys, Ben?
So planning and city building in New Zealand's going through a bit of a renaissance period at the moment. Since the 1960s, we followed North America of where you've got your small city centre and then all your single-use suburbs with your big box shopping malls and that connected by, your 4 and 6 lane highways going everywhere. Over the last decade or so, we've found this doesn't work. So we're going through a bit of a rebirth, as Henry said, going back towards mixed use, back more to compact living, and just trying to find our feet again with things that doesn't revolve around the car. And of course, you have that friction there between what we've been used to and what we're trying to achieve now, especially in the days of the Paris Accords kicking through.
Yeah, I feel like going forward, walkability score is so important these days.
And transit as well. And this is where I use City Skylines to teach my fellow peers about aspects of urban planning where they can see it visually. So I might say traffic or transit hierarchy now might seem double Dutch or gobbledygook, but when I run through it in a standard stream, people understand this is why you don't put residential on a big 6 lane road, and this is why you don't put your trucks down a little tiny road, and they can understand. And it's one of the great things about cities is it's just a great communication tool.
Yep.
You will.
Yeah, so it's so interesting. Like the difference in the cities where I live now is so mind-boggling. And like where I live in the Pacific Northwest now is an earthquake zone. So we have an entirely different set of like rules for height, densities, like spacing. Yeah. Over here, there's so many more hills. We have older trees. So it's kind of weird. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape as a result of where I am. And then in Toronto before, it was just like wide open flatness. You had fields you could just buy and build a whole new suburb. So
yeah.
You're pretty much
very, very different.
You're pretty much like our capital in Wellington, which is in the centre of the country. It's very earthquake prone, so they're very strictly regulated by regulations because they're all predicting one day the big one will hit the city.
Oh yeah, that's what they're saying here. Everyone jokes about it.
Yeah, so same situation with the capital.
Yeah, as a result of this, though, on the island itself, like getting a house is very, very challenging, and so the vacancy rate is usually less than 10%.
Yeah, the housing crisis, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see like any effects of natural disasters in your city planning, Henry, like in Japan or China?
Some troubles, like I think the trouble is like some of the trend in China. I mean, currently is like the overpopulation has caused the problems of pollutions. You know, a lot of factories just open up in the near part of the city. But yeah, it's not been solved for. Yes, we have the solutions, but the problem still goes on, and we want to move all the factories away from the cities and to the isolated part to stuff like that. But
yeah, it's tricky though, because like you can relocate them and then the city can kind of grow and then catch up, and then like would you do that all over again almost? Like
yep.
Yeah, like China like to have the problem like we have a lot of kind of hazies, like the kind of dust and
yeah
just flow around the city, and that's just suffocated, and people just got like the cancer rate just grew up, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the green environmental impact's definitely forefront these days.
Yeah. So when we're talking about your areas in, comparison to maybe other similar areas or not similar areas, what makes your area, for example, where you live, stand out when you compare it to something else? For example, here where I live in a city in Sweden, we have a very very suburban kind of way of living, and but nothing that really stands out. Every city looks pretty much the same except for maybe some historical features somewhere. Do you have like similar things around your area, for example, Ben?
So with Auckland, we're on an isthmus, so we've got the Tasman Sea on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other, and our narrowest point's only 1 kilometre apart. Do you imagine trying to funnel all your people and all your goods between that little narrow strip? But the one thing that stands out is Auckland actually sits on 48 volcanoes. 2 of them are deemed active.
48? Holy
so
dude.
we've got
Wow.
So we've got 48 volcanoes in the city. 2 of them are deemed active or dormant, and so you can imagine our civil defense planning around if one of those two go back up, what will happen to the city. So it's one of the unique features Auckland has is all our volcanoes. Wonderful places to stand on, not so wonderful if one of them goes back up.
Yeah.
But we don't suffer from quakes. But the two main natural disasters we have to watch is tsunamis. We had a major risk last month
from
the big one, and hurricanes. So we do still capture tropical cyclones that drop out of Fiji and the South Pacific tropics.
Yeah. Do you have that as well, Will?
Yeah, so we're in like tsunami zone. We have to have like evacuation plans. I know where like my high ground is, so it's kind of like scary. Like hope it doesn't happen too often or anything. But kind of nerve-wracking because like definitely where I lived before, like none of this was an issue. The only scary thing was like a nuclear power plant nearby, and then that would never be an issue, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, it feels completely surreal to me to have something like that. Like in Sweden, we don't have those kind of issues at all. So do you have something similar, Henry, or how's it in your area?
I guess like, yep, like so the trends like pretty similar. Like, I think it's pretty same as like the Sweden. Like all the city in China look the same, you know. Things like because like the open up policies like currently by some special policies, economics policies. So all the cities are built in the like 10s or 20 years in this time zone. So it's
similar feel to them.
Pretty much the same. Yeah, like all the things grow up very fast, but like you can see it's like the same fashion, same style. All the skyscrapers and some apartment buildings just look same. Except some special traditional cultural stuff like that. But yeah, still looks same.
Yeah, I feel like where I live, a lot of it, like the city Langford is only 30 years old. We've had one mayor the whole time, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just kind of like a ground up built city. It was built originally around a military base. So it's kind of like a small community that started that way. But it feels like any like BC town. It's kind of wild how that happens. And it's very distinctly different than Victoria, which is the capital city.
Yeah. So a lot of cookie cutter development.
And like it's so funny because the BC style is so unique. Like compared to Ontario, it's wild. If I was playing GeoGuessr, I would know now. You know.
Good old GeoGuessr.
Yeah. Do you have something similar around your area, Ben, where you live, that characterizes your area, except for other areas in New Zealand?
So Auckland is quite unique. Before we became a unitary authority 11 years ago, we were made up of 5 cities and 5 cities and 2 districts. And then in 2010, we unified under one council with all the divisions underneath that. So I live in the sub-region called South Auckland, so south of the city centre. And we're the biggest and the fastest growing region in Auckland and New Zealand. And the reason why South Auckland was born post-war was all the industry. So all the industry was located out our way. And so the urban form that also followed it was the cookie cutter, suburban style, low density, detached housing. And it was just plopped down the motorway and down the railway line, and then it spread out in each direction.
Oh, do you guys still use the railway line?
So we still use heavy rail for our passenger and freight. We've got light rail on the cards, but bus is the main form of transport.
Yeah, we're both
from one end.
Form.
Yeah, so that's where we are. But if you go to the central city, or what we call the Isthmus, you will see a very unique style. You will see Victorian and Edward era architecture. But that's different again. If you go down to Napier and Hawke's Bay, you'll see all the Art Deco buildings. And the reason why that is...
I love that.
And the reason why Napier is extremely different is I think it was 1931, the city got entirely flattened by a very large earthquake. Nothing was left standing. So they decided in the rebuild to do all Art Deco. So
I think I heard that actually somewhere. Yeah. Not too recently.
Napier, Hawke's Bay is just all Art Deco, whereas Auckland is a hodgepodge of everything around the world. Depending on the flavour of the month. Depending on what the urban designers think the flavour of the month is.
Do you have an Art Deco around you, Will?
Just a little bit. No, I wish we had more. The housing here is nothing too crazy. Like back in like Ontario and Toronto, a lot of old nice brick houses, whereas here they're not quite as nice. Not to say that impolitely, but if you go into Victoria though, which is the older city, you get some really cool stuff there. And Victoria actually has Canada's oldest Chinatown, which is interesting.
Oh wow,
Nice.
pretty cool. How old is it? Do you know?
I have no idea. It's old
Very
though.
old.
Quick Google.
I mean, in the grand scheme, like old is, you know, I should Google this, but no, like Canada, we're only 1867s. We're not even that old to begin with, right? So,
18. Wait, you're younger than New Zealand? Wow.
yeah, we're new. Holy smokes!
you're-
And our
you're
last
new.
province only hopped on board in like the 40s or something. Yeah, we're newly unified in that scene or that
Oh,
sense.
you're a baby. You're just a baby.
Hmm.
With everything looking the same in your area, Henry, do you have any Art Deco around your
Oh,
neighborhood?
like in China, like some. I can say some art decos. Yeah, we have it, but like it's most in some special areas, some art zones. But like all these designs you can see on the street, it's like we actually it's not that artistic because like government don't want. Not like don't want you to have those kind of so much kind of artistic stuff. They don't think that could have some functions. So we have the arts, but like in art zones, museums, some part we have a lot of arts, but daily life you cannot see it on like, some residential buildings or something like that. Which is
That's frustrating.
Some
Yeah,
part
like-
big city. I think big city have this kind of problems. Maybe in
Yeah,
China,
you lose like a little bit of the culture, a little bit of the becomes kind of like a concrete jungle. You kind of lose that like
it's like all skyscrapers boxes.
yeah dystopian future.
Blade Runner.
So you guys prefer the suburbs more than skyscrapers?
That's for sure.
They have their place.
I think they both
From
kind of
an-
serve their own purpose, right?
But that said, skyscrapers are limited to only 10 places in Auckland. So the city centre and what we call our 10 metropolitan centres, they're the only places you can do the so-called high-rises. Anything else has to be below 8 stories, which is mid-rise in our books. So yeah, it's limited. So you couldn't do a whole big map. You couldn't put it this way. You can't go Coruscant level of skyscraper level. Our planning would forbid it quite quickly.
In my city, I think the tallest building is 6 stories. So it's we're tiny in terms of density.
Yeah,
we're spread out. We have a lot of hills, but it's not very tall buildings.
Yeah, ours is the
in
sky
China,
tower.
in China, I guess like we have a lot of population, so there's a lot of tall residential buildings, like apartment line up in the city.
Dude, the amount of cities in China that have over 1 million people—that is mind-blowingly cool.
Yeah, that's too much.
Maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, speaking of population, by the way, do you see, how that affects we were talking about, transportation before, like buses. I guess buses isn't really the thing you use maybe in China. Do you have maybe other transportation that are more common?
So in the past, like the time we don't have that, we are not that. People don't have that kind of money. They don't have the money to buy the car. But nowadays, people are buying a lot of cars, just like in the U.S., North America. But but also the high-speed railway in China is also grow very fast. So
dude, it's amazing
because they
love to travel.
It's amazing. Just like
very jealous of that. Very jealous.
People now just could like. It's very fast to go anywhere, every part of the China. Like I can say 80% could be reached in maybe like 6 to 7 or 8 hours. So it's very fast.
Wow.
It's very fast and it's very comfortable and stuff like that.
Yeah, is it always on time? Because we always have problems with trains in Sweden. Every train is always late. it's like a joke here. Are you always on time in China, or how does that look?
Train typically say train is on time. It's not like plane just delayed every time. Train is still like punctuated.
Wow.
In China,
That's
I wish we had that, and I wish we had that in Tokyo.
We have no train
style of efficiency.
Yeah, they let the rails deteriorate, and there's just no more trains running on the island now.
Really?
Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah, it same with the light rail. They let that just kind of go. There was I don't know all the specifics of it, but there was a bridge collapse in the early 1900s, and a tram fell into the water, and then they scrapped the light rail in Victoria, and so the island is just buses. And to
Really?
deal with the rising population, they've been introducing double-decker buses, which is kind of
Oh yeah.
Ah.
Know that.
Oh, do you
Yeah,
have that
they-
in New Zealand as well?
We've got double-decker buses here in Auckland and Wellington, but before that we used to have the bendy buses or the articulated buses, or what we used to call the bendy boys.
Yeah, we got the
And-
Bendy Boys too. I love those things, man.
And when you were a school kid, the bendy boys were the best buses to sit on because you either sat
You
in the
can
middle,
stand in the middle.
or sit at the back, and the driver would just go around just fast enough to
Sure,
make the back swing out, and
Yeah.
you just it was just like a good roller coaster ride. But
Yeah, we used to do that, and we would try not to hold on, just to surf
Yeah.
the whole time. Like,
yeah, the bendy buses were fun, and then someone in the Ministry of Transport thought it was a good idea to take them away, and so the fun ended.
boom.
So now we're stuck with double deckers.
We actually have the Bendy
double deckers
Boys
are
here in
cool.
Sweden.
Yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
don't see much of the bendy.
Probably where they went, eh?
Yeah, they all went to Sweden.
However,
Actually,
ironically,
so interesting,
ironically,
funny. I don't want to cut you off here. I have a random super thought. It's weird that Canada is not a left-hand drive because we're a Commonwealth like you guys. So I just
Your
thought of that 'cause the buses
yeah,
would have been left-hand, right?
your proximity to the United States would have done that away. Otherwise, you could, because you share a
Pish
common
posh.
system.
You know, we weren't we were like enemies with them at the time or something, weren't we? Like,
Well,
you think we'd have that British influence, but I don't know. I feel like most colonies were they drive on the left. I feel like we're the odd one out.
Yes, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, most of the Pacific Islands, Japan, although not a Commonwealth country, Japan's left-hand traffic because it was influenced by Britain pre-war.
That's been- yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes City Skylines so fun. So if I'm streaming when the North Americans are awake and watching, I can guarantee I can automatically confuse them with left-hand traffic, put in a couple of
Oh,
roundabouts,
dude, the
and then
times I
just go-
try it. Oh my, I confuse myself, man.
it's
It's not even that complicated, but my brain just can't get it. I've never driven it in real life. I've never done a vehicle where the steering wheel's on the other side. I can't do it. I can't compute it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but going back to bendy buses, we're having to bring the bendies back, and it's a funny reason why. So we've just opened up 2 airport transit lines going into our airport, one from my sub-region, and one will be coming in from the city centre. Now, the airport doesn't allow double-deckers. And the reason for that is the bendy buses have to fit underneath the wing of the larger aircraft. Now, a double-decker can't do that. A bendy bus can, so we have to bring the bendies back to service the airport. 'Cause if they have to yeah, but a nostalgia. So, school kids, you get to ride what your parents used to go on.
I miss those 1960s fishbowl buses when I was a kid back in Toronto.
Yeah, I remember you showing us those.
Cool. I mean, it's also different, you know. Everything from trains on time to bendy boys and double deckers. You know, I think a lot of us think about when we talk about double deckers only about England or
Yeah.
those very iconic transportation things. But they're everywhere. They're multiplying.
Yep.
But talking about, we've been talking a lot about the real world and everything that city looks like in the real world. But we also, of course, want to talk about your creations. What you do in City Skylines. But when it comes to architecture and city planning, both in real life, but also when you create cities yourself, what do you get inspired by when you create something, and what doesn't inspire you at all? If you want to start, Henry, that would be super interesting to hear.
Yeah, so I mean, like Chinese cities, and I just make my cities compared to the main Japanese cities. So like like city in Japan is it's very what I kind of say, it's close to each other.
Yeah, like densely packed.
Stick to each other. It's very high densities. So you can see that they can build the things on like, for example, they can build a mall on subway stations where they can build something build
the use of space is so smart.
So efficient. So
yeah, it's efficient. That's a good word, efficient.
I heard they can. The word is called TOD, the transported oriented development. So
Big thing in Tokyo, and it's a big inspiration in my line of work.
Yeah, so
The
it's very high efficient. The city is high efficient. So I really want to like the cities in my countries, in my games could be built like that. Yeah. This is some inspirations, I guess.
Yeah, Japanese infrastructure is so wild because like you have these insanely old cities and then just brand new infrastructure plopped in like these minute little spaces where it's going to fit, hopefully.
Yeah,
and they just seem to somehow make all that work. And then there's just so much more vertical space being utilized.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and that is like, can you apply that to your cities when you create in Skylines as well?
Yeah, you can apply it, but like it takes up a lot of kind of time, a lot of mods to do like move it like stuff like, and it's hard to.
Nobody plays cities in a hurry.
City Skyline.
That is very true. So when it comes to like non-inspiration, like what do you stay away from when you create something? What doesn't makes you tick?
I think it's the waste of land. Just is compared to the what I said above. Is the create a city. You see, there's a kind of wasteland. There's a blank in the middle part of the city. Is like you're annoying because why these things like we can build things that is functional in this here, so we can operate cities in the great efficiencies, and also we can build something. We can plant some trees here, make our city looks more beautiful. So I mean, I just hate there's a blanks in my middle part of the city. And I would just be
plazas, right? They're doing nothing.
So plazas are not your thing.
Unless they have trees. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Will? What inspires you?
I feel like a lot of like what I see and what I like drive on and experience daily influences me. I'd say like my cities definitely have like a North American feel to them. And whenever I try to deviate, like every few months I'll try to make a British city or something. And my God, man, I just fail so epically. It's always a fun learning process, especially trying to tackle the left-hand drive. But hopefully it makes for good viewing.
It makes for very good viewing. It's quite funny watching those who are native to right-hand traffic trying to do left-hand, so trying to replicate the Commonwealth. And it can either be very amusing to watch or very painful to watch, depending.
I've done the Swindon Magic Roundabout successfully a few times now, which is a 5-point magic roundabout thing.
It got a certain YouTuber's attention too for good work. Yep. So well done.
Yeah, I wish I had a little bit more of an eye when it came to building like European style, especially older cities. Like Canada, we're so new of a country that everything's just more like planned. And we don't run into the same kind of like spacing problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have that same issue that Henry has, like with a blank space that could be functions.
No, there are definitely some parts in some urban centers where like space is not utilized properly, or there's some like political stuff. People are holding on to like empty lots, hoping the price goes up, right? So you have these eyesores. But no, I feel like for the most part, we have a good cultural like melange happening here. We have some good architecture, especially in Toronto. Toronto was a fun mix of everything. And like 2 million plus people, you had all the food, all the culture, all the different zones working together.
Yeah.
And then where I live now, it's like a little eensy-weensy 1% small, a little bit of that.
Has your move affected your creation somehow?
Oh, God, so much so. Yeah, so where I live now, so much more hills, and it's all like small town vibes. So that's entirely transformed. Before I was doing like big grid cities, and I had an issue doing the smaller stuff because I just had no like actual concept and how it really worked.
Yeah. But now that you've seen it like in real life, you can actually apply it.
Oh, yeah, so much easier too, yeah. And then to get here too, it's 4,500 kilometers in between the cities. And so I saw like just the whole country, everything in between. So a lot of influence, which is cool.
And Canada is a very, stretched out country. How many time zones do you have in the country?
Like 4, maybe?
That's insane.
Because I'm 3 hours behind when I used to be.
Yeah. So like if we compare
and then the province of Ontario, where Toronto's located, it's 1 day's drive just to get out of that province.
That is insane. That is insane.
So it took me about a week to get here, which is crazy.
That's insane. But like talking about, the difference if we're talking about a city on the West Coast and then talking about a city on the East Coast, do you see how they differ as well?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, like architecturally planning, because the West Coast, because of the tsunamis and the earthquake zone, you just can't have the tall buildings, can't have the same density. And just in terms of the hills and the geography and stuff, there's so many more restrictions here. So you just might not be able to build what you want because you've got this super massive boulder in the way.
Yeah. Going back to inspiration. So what doesn't inspire you at all? What do you stay away from when you create something?
That's I find that when you do stuff to be like totally picture perfect and like overly symmetrical, I feel like it starts to look a little bit fake and you kind of lose that organic kind of growth kind of feel.
Brazil.
So I tend to stay away from areas that are like too perfectly planned, especially like city centers. I like when things kind of have a bit of a chaotic kind of vibe almost.
Yeah. Did you say Brazil?
And then finding
Henry?
like the balance and the harmony in the chaos.
Yeah, that is a good point as well. Did you say Brazil, Henry?
I mean, there's like very symmetrical city in Brazil. Is that Brasilia? I guess,
Brasilia,
like,
it's the capital.
Brasilia. Yeah, Brasilia. And very symmetrical one.
Yo, also huge city, man. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a big one, but yeah, she's very, very master planned, very symmetrical, and very particular. And there's whole geography papers on purpose-built capital cities like that and why they don't work.
No, they run into traffic problems, I think, the most often, don't they?
It's also, if you look at how cities have been since the dawn of civilization, cities are pretty much organic. There's four things a city will form around: industry, trade, industry, or military. So if your cities are not founded around one of those, it's very hard.
Wait, hold on. You said industry twice there. Hold on. Say it again.
I would say that. So industry, trade, so transport, defense.
Oh,
So
that's
there
the one.
will
Yeah,
be
the defense.
Yeah, defense, and the other one, academia or science. Yeah, so the four, and that's the reason why a city will often be founded. So you look at these artificial capital cities that are a bit like they do, and it's like they're not around one of those four concepts, and so yeah, as you would have pointed out, they struggle quite a bit. Canberra's another one.
That makes sense.
In Australia.
Oh yeah, that's the one that's like the perfectly planned city. That one, yeah.
Yeah. So,
sometimes China want to create this kind of cities, but it's not working.
No.
Yeah.
So why isn't it working for those who don't know?
It's just not working now, but I'm not sure like in the future it will work.
Yeah. So Will, you don't want perfect. You want something more suburban, more relaxed, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah. Definitely when I'm doing my big cities, though, I'll have like perfectly planned grids and like I want to say smart looking layouts, but I'm really enjoying the kind of the willy-nilly, make a street any direction you want, work with the hills, have some fun.
Right.
And wonder why your traffic meters at 60%.
Listen, don't worry about that, man. Don't worry about that. That's a challenge for late game, right?
I mean, that depends on what you're building, right? If you're building like the most efficient traffic situation, maybe that's not the way.
Everyone's gonna walk then if that's the case, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Ben? What inspires you when you create? I mean, this is super interesting for you as well, since this is actually what you do for a living.
So as a spatial planner, my line of work is I influence the actors, so private and public sectors. So I influence their behaviors, which then influences the spatial form. So the spatial form being what the city will look like, and vice versa, using the spatial form to influence behavior. So if I am trying to get a lot of mixed use in one area, the behavior I'm trying to influence is everyone will walk or bike everywhere rather than use the car as they might have done 20 years ago, where you had your housing here, your mall here, your work here, and the only way you could get to it was a motorway. So what inspires me, so when I do my City Skylines playthroughs, I do mixed reality. So I blend the virtual and real world together into Twitch and YouTube videos. So I blend the best and worst of both worlds.
No, your stuff's good, man. You got a good organic look to your cities.
Yeah, so this goes right back to the SimCity 4 days, the Simtropolis days. You had two.
Oh my god, Centropolis! I have not heard that, dude, in ages. Sorry.
And that's where my name comes from. So this name's 18 years old.
No
my
way.
screen name. It's an old name. So there was two lines of thought. Ploppable, where you plopped everything down in perfection. Or organic, where you just used the zones, and it was basically one step away from absolute utter chaos, which is what most cities are. And that transferred through into City Skylines. So when I load the map and it's modded, I'll have a basic idea of what I want, a basic end goal, and then I'll work my way towards it. But there are 5 common themes that I will always run through any of my city builds. First one is left-hand traffic. Second one is I do what's called the urban island geography, which I'll cover in a minute. The third one is the rush hour mod, or the real-time mod is enabled. So the real-time mod means it simulates the 2 peak hours, it simulates the weekend, and it simulates nighttime. So
I'm sure your CPU just loves that.
Yeah, my CPU just dies every time I mention it. So what happens there? As we know with the base game, you just basically see the days, the months, and the years roll by. Real time drops it down to hourly. It drops it right down to real time. And so I've got to factor in with my building and planning. Okay, I've got 2 peak hours. I've got weekends. I've got shopping. I've got events. And I've got a nighttime economy. And for an example,
do you also use the no despawning with the traffic president?
No, because otherwise my rig will literally...
Goodness.
If you think Fukushima was bad, my rig will do Chernobyl. It's pretty intensive.
Oh my
but and I've said it in my videos more than once, it's not uncommon for my transit system to be more busy at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning than at 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. It's a strong nighttime economy. So that's I think it's the third or fourth one. I do a 24/7 economy.
Nice.
And then the last one I do is transit-orientated developments, as Henry mentioned earlier, and I always use the European themes as the base mode. So I put all that together, and it creates for some very organic, but some very rich and chaotic play, which is how most cities are.
It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things. And my land use can be efficient. Some days it's not efficient. So between industry and the main city, you'll see a lot of blank land, just as you do in real cities, because you have that's often an area in transition. So
sure, yeah.
So that happens. So that's translated out. But the one thing that does not inspire me is I can be lazy with interchanges and motorways. You'll see other streamers and content creators who will spend literally a week.
Love them highways.
Yep.
Love them.
Who will do these massive 8 to 12 lane highways.
Oh yes, give it to
week
me.
On their
Collectors, Express, all of it. Let's go.
Yep. And what do? I click the roundabout tool. I select a 3-lane roundabout, plop it down, 4 ramps done. 30 seconds later. I'm sorry, I could be. I call it efficiency. Others call it vandalism. So. Yeah, mixed reality inspires me. Interchanges and 12-lane highways do not, because I always focus around transit-orientated developments, so
that's a winning plan in the long run, anyway.
Yeah, and so what an urban island is you have your city center, and then you use the City Skylines district tool to create all these semi-independent islands that you can do your local stuff in, and then it's all connected up with the transit system, so you can still move from one side to the other.
Yeah, it's like a series of like self-sufficient neighborhoods almost.
Semi-self-sufficient, so you're still reliant on industry, and you're still reliant on, say, a city centre or a metro centre. And for those who are wondering, yes, the highways are still there. It's just not a dominant feature in my playthrough. So the intercity highway will always be there, but the main roads are my 4-laners with bus lanes and light rail.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about all these different kinds of areas in the world and how you know, what you get inspired by. And I assume that it's a lot about, getting inspired by where you are, obviously, as you will.
Yeah, I feel like regional geography plays a huge role.
Exactly. So super interesting. We're actually running out of time right now. It's been so quick, I know. But maybe we can do a follow-up. But with this someday, because it's super interesting. And
Yep.
obviously, we're probably going to have questions, from the audience after this. So feel free to answer any questions that might pop up from the audience.
I'll preempt one question right now.
Mm-hmm.
Roundabouts are your friends.
They are.
That is all.
They are. Fundamentally, they are.
They are your friends.
The game is strong on the island. They're definitely converting a lot, so I'm on board with that.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll end on that. Roundabouts is your friend. Thank you, everyone.
That's a good one.
for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Thank you, Will, and thank you, Ben, for joining. And this has
Thank
been
you for having us.